ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशम तम नमाम्यहम. At the conclusion of last lecture, that is on Monday, I told you about the scheme of things to come in future. That we are now taking the last lecture of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga, the real and the apparent man, delivered in New York, 6th February 1896. After that, in the book there are two more lectures on universal religion. They are not part of actually Jnana Yoga, so I would not be taking them. After this lecture, we will take up Swamiji's Song of the Sannyasin, which is given in the beginning of this book. That completes our course of Jnana Yoga. And then, today I talked with the organizers. It has been decided that after that I will be taking Swamiji's Raja Yoga. Why? Because from the very beginning, that is what was our mind, that we are dealing with the 4 yoga books by Swami Vivekananda. Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and that practical Vedanta is actually part of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. So we took practical Vedanta, part of the same series as Swamiji is giving in London, and then Jnana Yoga, lastly Raja Yoga. So that was the original scheme, and that is the original scheme. Now, second point. This name of this lecture is similar to a London lecture. The London lecture name was The Real Nature of Man. And this is the real and the apparent man. But the lectures are entirely different. Let me tell you that Vedanta, there are several ways of approaching Vedanta. Several. I usually feel, and I have been repeatedly telling you, from Vedas to Vedanta, from Devata Gyan to Brahma Gyan, one way. When they treat Vedanta as a philosophy, the traditional mode is to go through Sankhya, then Vedanta. But there is another way. Actually, there are several ways, as I am telling you. One way which Swamiji has been dealing is Dvaita, Vishradvaita, Advaita. That is one way. And this way, in this lecture, is following what Gaudapada has done in the Mandukya Karikas. All systems of Indian philosophy, all systems of Indian thought, if they can be divided as dualistic and non-dualistic, really, by name there are several. Madhvacharya calls his philosophy Shuddha Advaita, which is Shuddha Dvaita. Ramanuja calls his philosophy Vishishta Advaita, but it is also a refined Dvaita. So categorically, if we find, then we will find that Dvaita and Advaita. In between Dvaita and Advaita is the heterodox philosophy called Buddhism. And this is the way which Gaudapada has dealt in his Mandukya Karikas. And that is the way which Swamiji has dealt with in this lecture. In no other lecture of Jnana Yoga, Swamiji has used that method. Though elsewhere he has used. In this connection, let me tell you something more. We are dealing with books, Swamiji's books on four yogas. But about Vedanta or about this very Advaita, Swamiji has dealt with in several other lectures. Among the Indian lectures, Kollamuttu Almora, which is known as Kollamuttu Almora, there are two lectures on Advaita Vedanta. The Calcutta lecture, Vedanta in all its phases, broadly goes by that Sankhya and then Vedanta. And Lahore lecture, Lahore, which is today the capital of Pakistan. Islamabad is the capital, but Lahore is in Pakistan. That Lahore was a central hub of Hinduism. And there was one professor of mathematics, Tirath Ram Gosai. He organized, I'm just telling something external, but I am so much inspired by that very thought. He collected boys of 4 colleges, and before them, Swamiji has given that lecture, Vedanta. And that Vedanta, Swamiji has followed this very method which he has followed in this lecture. All dualistic schools contradicted, destroyed by Buddhistic thought. And no dualist has any answer to that. But Advaita Vedanta, in Swamiji's language, reconciles both. It shows what was correct in the dualism and it shows what is correct in Buddhism. And that is the Lahore lecture. By length, if you go, one of the biggest lectures of Swamiji, it must have taken more than 2 hours. And that was delivered before the college students of 4 colleges. Anyway, then there are several lectures scattered in his complete works on various Upanishads. On Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Open Secret, Yajnavalkya in Maitri, so many. Now, if God wills, that will be another endeavor, another separate, to take classes on Swamiji's Vedanta lectures wherever they are available. India in those days included Ceylon and what is called Sri Lanka today. And in that, the main place of Hinduism was Jaffna. And among the lectures, Colombo to Almora, there is a lecture in Jaffna on Vedantism. That is the comprehensive lecture on Hinduism. Then, for your information, I am stating, those who are interested, Swamiji's talks on Jnana Yoga, there is, in complete verse, there is a collection. And it is called Discourses on Jnana Yoga. They are class notes collected by most probably A.C. Waldo or someone. Beautiful dealing with Vedanta is there in that Discourses on Jnana Yoga. So if God wills, that is another topic. But after telling all this, I am telling you, in this scheme of things, we have thought of Swamiji's 4 yogas, and there we are coming to this lecture in which Swamiji has treated Vedanta through Buddhism. That is the speciality of this lecture, and that will come at some point. So we will now see how Swamiji has, in his own language, reconciled the various conflicting thoughts which arise in the human mind. So now with this background, let us start. The Real and the Apparent Man, delivered in New York, 6th February 1896. Here we stand, and our eyes look forward, sometimes miles ahead. Common with American lectures, poetically, through the force of personality and language, carrying our mind high, and then teaching Vedanta there. To the mind which has been carried high, which has been made fit to receive Vedanta, Swamiji gives Vedanta. That is the force of personality. Swamiji makes all of us adhikaris and then teaches Vedanta. So, here we stand and our eyes look forward, sometimes miles ahead. Man has been doing that since he began to think. So, looking ahead cannot be through eyes unless we become yogis, unless we get special powers by the yogi. But in our thought, it need not be limited. It has its own limitations, but we can think of days ahead, miles ahead. So, man has been doing that since he began to think. So, looking forward depends upon thinking. Man has been, he is always looking forward, looking ahead through his thought. He wants to know where he goes even after the dissolution of his body. That is a common theme in Kathopanishad or in the Real Nature of Man or in several lectures of Swamiji. Various theories have been propounded. System after system has been brought forward. System of thought to suggest explanations for this, where we go, what we are after death. Some have been rejected, while others have been accepted, and thus it will go on. So long as man is here, so long as man thinks. So when he thinks, he gets different ideas, and this process will go on. Some have been shown through our rational intellect to be wrong. Some have been accepted, and yet the thinking continues. There is some truth in each of these systems. Though some of them have been rejected, there is some truth in each of these systems. There is a good deal of what is not truth in all of them. That is why they were rejected. That is the mixture. And we have to filter out and find what is correct. I shall try to place before you the sum and substance, the result of the inquiries in this line that have been made in India. So Indian thought, both orthodox and unorthodox, Vedic as non-Vedic, Swamiji is dealing with. I shall try to harmonize the various thoughts on the subject. What is harmonizing? Not compromise, huh? Compromise, synthesis, harmony, they are different ideas. There another thing is eclecticism. Compromise means I accept something or you accept something of mine, we shall not fight. Synthesis means something of yours, something of mine, add. Eclecticism means take one line from Quran, one line from Bible, one line from... None of these stand as harmony. Harmony means, you remember, harmonium. There are several notes in that instrument. And if you play which note after which note, and they should not jar in our ears. The two notes being played together can produce jarring effect. but two notes being placed in proper place, that is harmony. Harmony is to show what is the place in man's life of this thought. What is the place in man's life of this thought? What is the place in man's life of this thought? What is the ultimate thought? That is called harmony. And Sri Ramakrishna is known as the prophet of harmony. Swami Vivekananda is his messenger. So, Swamiji is showing contradictions may be there, opposite things may be there, but each system, in what respect it is true, what is its place in our life, what is a system in other system in our life, that is the way Swamiji is going to deal. I shall try to harmonize the various thoughts on the subject as they have come up from time to time among Indian philosophers. I shall try to harmonize the psychologists and the metaphysicians. Metaphysics means what is the reality behind, what is the reality behind, what is the reality behind. Psychologist here, Swamiji refers to epistemology. How we perceive, what instruments are required for perception, for any knowledge, that Swamiji terms as psychology. Take an individual, find out how he perceives, what are the things required, his eyes are eyes is sufficient, mind is required. So this is one process of psychology. And that leads to the real nature of the soul, individual. Metaphysics will lead to the real nature called Brahman. And Swamiji will harmonize them. Swamiji will show how both of them lead to the same conclusion. And if possible, I shall harmonize them with modern scientific thinkers also. If Swamiji has given a provision there, if possible. Many people are enamored of science, especially those who have not undergone scientific logic or have not undergone that grind of abstract sciences. Either they have not gone through science at all, or Swamiji calls surface scientists, like somebody has become a graduate in science and all that. Surface scientists. And it is they who deny the metaphysics. Whatever they cannot experience, they simply say does not exist. Swamiji has shown, talked in his Raja Yoga, this is not the sign of a true scientist. So, Swamiji has said in his Chicago lecture on Hinduism, the latest discoveries of modern science are like distant echoes of the truths discovered by the Vedantic rishis. Distant echoes. Some of my friends, I have heard myself, science is reaching where Vedanta has reached. Scientists may reach, science will not reach. Theoretically, hypothetically, Atman is equal to Brahman. No. Science believes in perception by five senses. Logic, hypothesis, five senses. Verification, five senses. Science does not believe in supersensuous experience. Just the other day I was talking with a sadhak. And the sadhak said that you talk of, or Vedanta talks of subtler elements. And scientist talks of proton, electron, God particle, I told that science has never proposed, not imagined, that we can experience these particles of which science is talking. Hypothetical are they. Science believes only in perception by five senses. So, they combine and the gross effect will be such and such. That can be shown in a test tube. Nothing beyond this. Science feet are fixed in clay. It can look to skies but cannot reach there. Vedanta starts by lifting the feet off from the earth and going above. I am talking in general, so Swamiji here says, if possible, I shall harmonize them with modern scientific thinkers also. Thinkers. And two principles of science which science cannot fulfill, Vedanta fulfills in full. That Swamiji has given in many lectures. Here also we had seen that in one or two lectures. Swamiji said that what is science, what is rational thinking? To find more and more general categories, individual, general, more general, till we reach the universal. That is the trend of science. Secondly, to find explanation from within. That is the trend of science. And both these categories, both these things are fully fulfilled by Vedanta. By showing Brahman, the hankering of a man for universal has been solved. And by proving the identity between Brahman and Atman, everything is explained from within Atman, not outside. Anyway, but taking this clue, Swamiji can harmonize. And so he says, if possible, in this connection, let me tell you that when Swamiji was lecturing in Europe, top scientists of those days used to attend Swamiji's lectures and top scientists. And they used to tell Swamiji, we get a lot of inspiration in our research work from your lectures because you are asking us to go toward the unity through science. Anyway, so Swamiji is not going to another thing. Swamiji is not going to present any of his individual views. Forget, please, that Thakur has brought something new, Swamiji has brought something new. In one of the lectures we had read directly, in Swamiji's lecture on cosmos, I am not going to tell you anything new, only language is new. Another beauty of Sri Ramakrishna incarnation represented by Swamiji is to put harmonically all the thoughts. All the thoughts should be put harmonically. So, that is what Swamiji is doing in this lecture. The one theme of the Vedanta philosophy is the search after unity. So that is the scientific thought. The Hindu mind does not care for the particulars. It is always after the general. Small details of the particulars do not give the idea of the nature of that thing. If you study the design and the making of a jar or anything made of clay, it does not give you the real nature of clay. But through analytical means, if you can find that all the things made of clay is nothing but clay. So this Swamiji says, the Hindu mind does not care for the particular, it is always after the general, nay, the universal. Means general, more general, till we reach the universal. What is that? By knowing which everything else is to be known. This is both in Mundaka Upanishad and in Chandogya with a little different language. Chandogya says, by knowing which the unknown becomes known. And Mundaka Upanishad says, by which everything will be known. Common thing throughout the world. That is real. That is one theme. As through the knowledge of one lump of clay, all that is of clay is known, Chandogya. So what is that by knowing which this whole universe itself will be known? Swamiji has freely translated it. There the language is by which the unknown also will become known. That is the one search. The whole of this universe, according to the Hindu philosophers, can be resolved into one material which they call Akasha. We have seen this repeatedly. Akasha is the ultimately primordial material. It is not the empty space. So can be resolved into one material which they call Akasha. Resolved means go to this cause, finer, forms are there, let the forms be destroyed, and we get Akash. Everything that we see around us, feel, touch, taste, is differentiated manifestation of this Akash. Akash itself becomes Vayu and Tej and Ap and Prithvi. It mixes and combines and becomes this or that. And everything Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha is nothing but this Akasha. Manifestation of Akash. All that is power in the universe. Power means that which changes the configuration of matter. That is the best definition of power. That which changes the configuration of matter. Matter is arranged in one way. If it is arranged in a different way, power. Remember the language of physics or mathematics? A thing continues in its motion in a straight line unless applied by an external impulsive force. So force. To change the same motion, we require a force. All that is power in the universe, manifesting as force or attraction, is physical. Nay, even as the thought, Sukshma force, which the science has not thought. Is but a different manifestation of that one power which the Hindus call prana. This prana, acting on Akasha, is creating the whole of this universe. In the beginning of a cycle, when this was not manifested, it is getting manifested, that is called beginning of the cycle. This prana, as it were, sleeps in the infinite ocean of Akasha, as it were, because prana is not a person to sleep, but as it were it sleeps. That means the action of the prana has become very, very subtle. It is not seen, it is not manifested. It existed motionless in the beginning. Then arises motion in this ocean of Akasha by the action of this prana. And as this prana begins to move, to aberrate, out of this ocean come the various celestial systems, suns, moons, stars, earth, human beings, animals, plants, and the manifestation of all the various forces and phenomena. Every manifestation of power, therefore, according to them, is this prana. Every material manifestation is Akasha. When the cycle will end, all that we call solid will melt away into the next form, Jalapralaya. because last was Prithvi, before that was Apa. So this will melt into next, will melt away into the next form. The next finer earthy liquid form, that will melt into gaseous. In between through Teja it goes, but then Vayu. And that into finer and more uniform heat vibrations, and all will melt back into the original Akasha. So Vayu is considered as a heat form, and what we now call attraction, repulsion and motion will slowly resolve into the original prana, going back to the cause. Then this prana is set to sleep for a period, again to emerge and to throw out all these forms, and when this period will end, the whole thing will subside again. Thus this process of creation is going down and coming up, oscillating between backwards and forwards. In the language of modern science, it is becoming static during one period, and during another period it is becoming dynamic. Static and dynamic, potential or kinetic. At one time it becomes potential, and at the next period it becomes active, kinetic. This alteration has gone on through eternity, cycle, eternity. That is the rational thought. Yet this analysis is only partial, because they have not found one element, there are still two elements. 92 elements are not elements. This much has been known even to modern physical science. Yes. Beyond that, the research of physical science cannot reach. But the inquiry does not stop. In consequence, we have not yet found that one by knowing which everything else will be known. We have resolved the whole universe into two components, into what we are called matter and energy, or what the ancient philosophers of India called Akasha and Prana, that is energy. The next step is to resolve this Akasha and the Prana into their origin. Both can be resolved into the still higher entity which is called mind. Now here Swamiji is going beyond the matter known to the science. Matter, energy. When they combine, they go back to one element, when they go back. And that is mind. It is out of mind, the Mahat. Mahat means universal mind. It is out of mind, the Mahat, the universally existing thought power, yes, that these two have been produced. Both Akasha and Prana come out to the universal mind called Mahat. Thought is a still finer manifestation of being than either Akasha or Prana. Taking Akasha and Prana as the external grossified thing, we have a higher resolution called mind and its movements. It is thought that splits itself into these two. Thought becomes power, thought becomes matter. The universal thought existed in the beginning, and that manifested, because existing becomes manifested, changed, evolved itself into these two, Akasha and Prana. And by the combination of these two, the entire universe has been produced. We must come to psychology. So, one derivation, universal mind. Matter, energy, universal mind. Now Swamiji starts from another direction, and these two have to be reconciled. We next come to psychology. I am looking at you. Epistemology Swamiji showing. The external sensations are brought to me by the eyes. This is according to Sankhya. I told you one day, the Vedantic idea of direct perception is that consciousness becomes, as soon as it falls on the mind, becomes bipolar light. One pole becoming I, the other pole, the wave going through some organ, falling on an object, and then I say, I see that object. But here, Swamiji is following the traditionalist among Vedantis for the beginning, where they go through the Sankhyas, and Sankhya says that the next come to psychology, Sankhya psychology. I am looking at you, the external sensations are brought to me by the eyes. They are carried to the sensory nerves, to the brain. The eyes are not the organs of vision, they are but the external instruments, because if the real organ behind that which carries the sensation to the brain is destroyed, I may have 20 eyes, yet I cannot see you. The picture on the retina may be as complete as possible, yet I shall not see you. Therefore, that the organ is different from its instruments. These are the locations where the organ sits and works. The eyes, the organ is different from the instruments. Behind the instruments, the eyes, there must be the organ. So it is with all the sensations. The nose is not the sense of smell, it is but the instrument, and behind it is the organ. With every sense we have, there is first the external instrument in the physical body, behind that in the same physical body there is the organ. Yet these are not sufficient for perception. Suppose I am talking to you and you are listening to me with close attention. Something happens, say a bell rings, you will not perhaps hear the bell ring. This happens many times. The pulsation of that sound came to your ear, struck the tympanium, the impression was carried by the nerve into the brain. If the whole process was complete up to carrying the impulse to the brain, why did you not hear? Something else was wanting. The mind was not attached to the organ. When the mind detaches itself from the organ may bring any news to it, but the mind will not receive it. When it attaches itself to the organ, then alone is it possible for the mind to receive the news. Yet even that does not complete the whole. Then psychology push further. The instrument may bring the sensation from outside, the organs may carry it inside, the mind may attach itself to the organ, and yet the perception may not be complete. One more factor is necessary. There must be a reaction within. That is buddhi. With this reaction comes knowledge. So knowledge is a reaction. But even then, the knowledge, the consciousness has not shined there. That which is outside sends, as it were, the current of news into my brain. My mind takes it up and presents it to the intellect, which groups it in relation to pre-received impressions and sends a current of reaction. So before sending the current of reaction, it refers it to the generals. And if it does not find a common group where it can fit, it becomes disturbed. Until it finds the common group, then it becomes satisfied. And then it sends the reactive message. And with that reaction comes perception. Here then is the will. The state of mind which reacts is called buddhi, the intellect. Yet even this does not complete the whole. One stop more is required. Supreme here is a camera and there is a short of cloth, and I try to throw a picture on that sheet. What am I to do? I am to guide various rays of light through the camera to fall upon the sheet and become grouped there. Something is necessary to have the picture thrown upon which does not move. I cannot form a picture upon something which is moving. That something must be stationary. On the cinema screen, the film is shown. Similar is the case with the sensations which these organs of ours are carrying inside and presenting to the mind, and which the mind in its turn is presenting to the intellect. This process will not be complete unless there is something permanent in the background upon which the picture, as it were, may be formed, upon which we may unify all the different impressions. Okay. What is it that gives unity to the changing whole of our being? What is it that keeps up the identity of the moving thing moment after moment? What is it upon which all our different impressions are placed together, upon which the perceptions, as it were, come together, reside and form a united whole? We have found that to serve this end there must be something, and we also see that something must be relatively to the body and mind motionless. So Swamiji is bringing about a fixed thing to see or to react. The sheet of cloth upon which the camera throws the picture is relatively to the rays of mind motionless, else there will be no picture. That is to say, the perceiver must be an individual. Individual means not here separate from others. Individual means conscious being. This something upon which the mind is painting all these pictures, this something upon which our sensations carried by the mind and intellect are placed and grouped and formed into a unity, is what is called the soul of man. All this combined together. We have seen that it is the universal cosmic mind that splits itself into the Akasha and the Prana, and beyond mind we have found the soul in us. Two different directions. Beyond universal mind we have not yet seen something. Behind our mind we have seen ourselves. In the universe, behind the universal mind, there is a soul that exists, and it is called God. Soul that exists means consciousness. In the individual, it is the soul of man. In this universe, in the cosmic, just as the universal mind becomes evolved into Akasha and Prana, even so, we may find that in the universal soul itself becomes evolved as mind, appears as mind. Soul, universal, appears as mind, then it appears as matter and energy, and then it goes on. Is it really so with the individual soul? So here what is the unifying force? Here what is that which does not change? We do require something which does not change. Is it really so with individual man? Is his mind the creator of his body and his soul the creator of the mind? Because that is also a creation. So what caused it? Some source. That is to say, are his body, his mind and his soul three different existences, or as they three in one, or are they three in one, or again are they different states of existence of the same unit being? So this is the analysis, that we shall gradually try to find an answer to this question. So Swamiji has brought two thoughts and left it. The first step that we have now gained, that means first of all we should know what we have known. The first step that we have now is this. Here is this external body. Behind this external body are the organs, the mind, the intellect, and behind this is the soul. At the first step, we have found, as it were, that the soul is geopardite from the body. So, we have found, as it were, that the soul is separate from the body. First instance, soul is separate from the body, separate from the mind itself. Opinions in the religious world become divided at this point. So, coming to psychology, up to a point, then opinions become divided at this point, and the departure is this, the difference between the opinions. All those religions used generally pass under the name of dualism, hold that the soul is qualified. That qualified means that it is of various qualities, that all feelings of enjoyment, pleasure and pain really belong to the soul. The non-dualists deny that the soul has any such qualities. They say it is unparalleled. So, the major difference, now he comes to that point. Clear? Universal, all right. Individual, behind the mind, soul. What is the relation? Let me first take up the dualist and try to present to you their position with regard to the soul and its destiny. Next, the system that contradicts them, that is Buddhism. And lastly, let us try to find the harmony which non-dualist will bring to us. So, Buddhism, Dvaita, Buddhism, Advaita. The soul of man, because it is separate from the mind and body, because it is not composed of Akasha and Prana, must be immaterial. Shall we proceed on this thought today? Time is at hand. We have proceeded slowly every point, and yet we have gone through. The soul of man, because it is separate from the mind and body, because it is not composed of Akasha and Prana, must be immaterial. Shall we proceed on this thought today? Time is at hand. We have proceeded slowly every point, and yet we have gone through 8 pages. We are in the 9th page. Not inclined to proceed, because from here deeper analysis starts. We shall gradually go. Next Monday I will take it up. Okay. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.